What would you do if your own family used your name without ever asking you? And what if the moment you realized it, you also realized it wasn't the first time? My name is Carol Bennett. I'm 64 years old, and I live alone in a small one-story house in Richmond, Virginia, not far from the old Air Force Base where I spent the better part of my adult life. The neighborhood is quiet. Most mornings start the same way. Coffee on the kitchen table, the low hum of the radio in the background, pale early light coming through the window above the sink. Simple. Steady. Mine. I served 22 years in the United States Air Force before I retired. After that, I found my rhythm in a different kind of service. 3 mornings a week at the local Veterans Center, helping older vets navigate the paperwork maze of benefits and appointments. Forms, deadlines, fine print. Problems that actually have solutions. I've always found comfort in that. I live by a few principles I picked up over 2 decades in uniform. Stay calm, stay clear, and never carry a load that isn't yours to carry. It took me most of my life to understand just how personal that last one would become. My younger brother Kevin is 53, 11 years younger than me. Growing up, he was the one my parents, Robert and Patricia, worried about the most. The one who needed extra patience, extra second chances, extra grace. I was the other one, the capable one, the one who figured things out and didn't ask for much. In our family, that was quietly understood to mean, Carol will handle it. So when I heard Kevin was getting married, I didn't hesitate. I called my supervisor at the Veterans Center, took a few days off, and packed an overnight bag. I wrapped the wedding gift carefully, a high-quality kitchen knife set and a $500 cash envelope tucked inside. Then I pointed my car north and started the 9-hour drive from Richmond to Cincinnati. I told myself this was a chance to reconnect, to show up for family the way I always had. I had no idea that this trip, the one I took out of love, would be the one that finally changed everything. 9 hours on the road gives you a lot of time to hope. And by the time I turned onto the gravel path leading to Oak Hollow Farm, I had convinced myself that this weekend was going to matter. The farm was beautiful in the way that only early evening light can make a place look. Warm golden lanterns lined the entrance. The old barn had been transformed. White string lights wrapped around every beam, long tables set with cream linens visible through the open doors. The smell of dry grass and wood smoke hung in the cool October air, and somewhere inside, a live band was playing something soft and unhurried. Guests moved across the lawn in their finest clothes, laughing, glasses in hand. For a moment, standing there with my gift tucked under my arm, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, like I belonged somewhere. Then I saw them. Robert and Patricia, standing near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. I smiled and walked toward them. My father saw me first. His expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough. The warmth drained out of it. My mother turned a second later, and what I saw on her face wasn't anger. It was something that cut deeper, embarrassment. She stepped toward me quickly and lowered her voice. Carol, you shouldn't be here. Tonight is for family only. I almost laughed. Mom, I said quietly, I am family. She glanced toward the barn doors, avoiding my eyes. Kevin has a lot going on today. Before I could respond, my father stepped closer, his voice flat and low. We didn't think you'd actually make the drive, Carol. Just then, a group of guests passed by. They glanced at me with mild curiosity. A woman standing off to the side, holding a wrapped gift, clearly not going inside. My mother turned to greet them with a bright smile, as if I had already disappeared. And in that moment, I understood. I pressed the gift and the envelope into her hands without a word, turned around, and walked back to my car, alone. I sat there in the dark parking lot while the music played on inside, and I thought about what it really means to be invisible to the people who are supposed to see you most. The deepest kind of hurt isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just settles quietly into your chest and stays there. I drove back to Richmond the next morning without a single phone call from anyone in my family. No explanation, no apology, just silence. The kind that tells you everything you need to know. 4 days passed. Life settled back into its quiet rhythm. Morning coffee, the Veterans Center, evening walks around the neighborhood. I had almost convinced myself to let it go, to file it away in that part of my mind where old family wounds live, when my phone rang on a Tuesday morning. I was at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around my mug, watching the maple tree in the backyard sway in the October breeze. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Sandra, the event coordinator at Oak Hollow Farm. Her voice was polite, almost apologetic. "Ms. Bennett," she said carefully, "I'm calling to follow up on the remaining balance for the reception. The amount outstanding is $28,000. How would you like to take care of that today?" I set my mug down slowly. The kitchen felt very still. "Sandra," I said, keeping my voice even, "why would you think I'm the one paying for this?" A brief pause. "Your name is listed as the financial guarantor on the reception contract, ma'am." I asked her to send me everything. The full contract, all correspondence, every document on file. She emailed it within minutes. I opened the contract first and scrolled to the bottom. There it was. Carol Bennett. My phone number. My email address. Everything correct. Everything accurate. Everything except the signature on the guarantor line, which was a clumsy, uneven scrawl that looked nothing like my handwriting. The kind of signature someone produces when they're copying a name they've only seen a handful of times. Then I opened the email thread. Kevin had written to Sandra 2 weeks before the wedding. His message was brief and confident. "My sister Carol will be covering the remaining balance as a wedding gift. She's very happy to contribute to our special day. You can send the invoice after the ceremony so it doesn't spoil the surprise." I read that sentence twice. She's very happy to contribute. I closed my eyes for a moment. I called Sandra back and told her clearly. I had never signed any document, never agreed to any financial obligation, and never been consulted about any of this. I asked her to escalate the matter to her legal department and requested a formal written confirmation within 24 hours. She agreed immediately. Not 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Kevin. His voice came through tight and sharp. "Carol, what did you say to the venue? They're calling me now demanding payment." I kept my voice calm. "Because it's your responsibility, Kevin." "You could cover it," he shot back. "You've always handled things like this." I paused. Those words landed differently than he probably intended them to. "No," I said quietly but clearly. "Not this time." The line went silent, and in that silence, I realized something I should have understood a long time ago. The real problem was never the $28,000. It was the assumption behind it, the belief, built over a lifetime, that Carol would absorb whatever was handed to her and never once ask why. I had barely set my phone down after the call with Kevin when it rang again. This time, my father's name on the screen. Robert Bennett had never been a man who raised his voice. His version of pressure was quieter than that, a measured tone, carefully chosen words. the kind of calm that still managed to carry weight. But when I answered, he sounded tired. Not angry, just worn. "Carol," he said slowly, "the venue says you're refusing to pay. I need to understand what's going on." I kept my voice steady. "Dad, I'm not refusing anything. I never agreed to it in the first place. I never signed that contract." A pause. Then, "Your mother thought you'd want to help. You've always been the one who comes through for this family." Something tightened in my chest, but I kept it out of my voice. "Dad, this isn't about whether I'm capable of helping." He was quiet for a moment, and then, almost without realizing what he was revealing, he told me the truth. Patricia had been the one to fill in my name on the contract. She had assumed, as she apparently always had, that Carol would understand. Carol would absorb it. Carol would not make a scene. Then he added something that stopped me cold. "You know, ever since you joined the Air Force, your mother always thought you were trying to prove something. You don't have to keep doing that." I sat very still at my kitchen table. Outside, a car passed slowly down the street. A dog barked twice and went quiet. In that one sentence, I understood something I had been carrying for decades without a name for it. My family had never once asked why I left. They had only ever decided what it meant. I took a slow breath and spoke clearly. "Dad, I drove 9 hours to be at my brother's wedding. You and Mom stopped me at the door. Then someone signed my name to a $28,000 contract without a single conversation with me. I did not create this situation." The silence that followed was long and heavy. My father didn't argue. He didn't apologize either. But that silence was, in its own way, the most honest thing he had said in years. The following morning, Sandra called to confirm what I already knew. The signature had been deemed invalid. The financial responsibility had been formally reassigned to Kevin and Lindsay. I thanked her, hung up, and got ready for my shift at the Veterans Center. Walter was already at his desk when I arrived, 71 years old, 2 tours in Iraq, the kind of man who has seen enough of life to stop dressing hard things up in polite language. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, then picked up his coffee cup, took a slow sip, and said, "Some families love each other just fine. It's the respect they never figured out. And that's the kind of hurt that doesn't heal easy." I nodded. For the first time since Oak Hollow Farm, I felt like someone actually understood. That evening, Kevin called one more time. The sharpness in his voice was gone. What replaced it was something quieter, something he was clearly not used to feeling. "Carol," he said, "did I actually hurt you? Or are you just trying to teach me a lesson?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window at the darkening sky and thought about the 9-hour drive, the parking lot, the gift I had pressed into my mother's hands without a word. Then I answered honestly, "Both, Kevin. It's both." He had nothing left to say to that, and neither did I. I didn't want to destroy my brother's marriage. I never wanted any of this. All I had ever wanted was to be seen, truly seen, by the people who had known me the longest. 64 years is a long time to wait for something that simple. Nearly a month passed before my father called again, and when he did, something in his voice had changed. The sharpness was gone. What I heard instead was something quieter, the sound of a man who had been sitting with something uncomfortable long enough to finally want to put it down. He told me that Kevin and Lindsay had worked out a multi-year payment plan with Oak Hollow Farm. They were handling it. Then he paused and said, "Your mother has been crying, Carol. She said she pushed you away and didn't realize it until it was too late." I didn't respond right away. I just looked out the window at the bare November trees lining my street in Richmond. Finally, he asked if I would come home for Thanksgiving. I said yes, but I told him clearly, "I'll come, Dad, but I'm not going to pretend none of this happened." He was quiet for a moment, then said simply, "I'm not asking you to." I left Richmond before sunrise on Thanksgiving morning. Somewhere along the Virginia-Kentucky border, I pulled into a small gas station and sat in my car for a few minutes. The sky was low and gray, the kind of November sky that feels like it's pressing down on everything. I watched a few trucks roll past on the highway and asked myself honestly, was I driving toward forgiveness, or was I just hoping to finally hear something real? I didn't have a clean answer, but I kept driving. When I reached my parents' house in Cincinnati, Patricia opened the door before I knocked. She didn't say anything at first. She just stepped forward and held on. Not the brief, careful hug of people maintaining appearances, but something genuine and tired and long overdue. When she stepped back, her eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Just that, 2 words. But after 64 years, they carried more weight than she probably knew. Kevin shook my hand in the hallway, his jaw tight with the particular discomfort of a man who knows he was wrong and has stopped trying to argue his way out of it. "I had no right to do what I did," he said quietly. "I know that now." Then Lindsay surprised me most of all. She looked at me steadily and said, "What happened forced Kevin and me to sit down and face things we'd been avoiding. If none of this had come to a head, I don't think we would have. So, in a strange way, thank you." Dinner that evening was quieter than Thanksgivings used to be. No one pretended the last few months hadn't happened, but the table felt more honest for it. Later that night, after the dishes were done and the house had gone still, my father and I sat together in the living room. The television was off. The only light came from the lamp in the corner. He leaned back in his chair and said, "I used to think being strong meant fixing everything for everyone around you." He paused. "But watching you these past months, Carol, I think I finally understand. Real strength is knowing what was never yours to carry in the first place." I smiled quietly. 22 years in the Air Force taught me that, Dad. He nodded once, slowly. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I should have said that a long time ago." Before I went to bed that night, I stood at the window of my old childhood bedroom and looked out at the dark, familiar Cincinnati street below. The wedding, the parking lot, the forged signature, the phone calls. All of it had started as a story about betrayal. But somewhere along the way, it had become something else entirely. A reckoning. A clearing. Sometimes the most powerful response to being wronged isn't a confrontation. It isn't an ultimatum. It's simply holding your ground, quietly, firmly, until the truth catches up with everyone involved. That night, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I slept well.